and all the excellencies here present. Because of time, let me quickly share my reflection on the subject matter of free, fair, and credible election. I stand before you as a Nigerian who, though I left the commission in 2022, I did not leave the idea of Nigeria and question of how democracy will survive in our country. And so the invitation for me to be here, but for the caliber of men and women that have served this country, at some point, and for 2 years, I switched off about this country, and I deliberately put my television station on Chinese station so that I don't want to hear anything about the country. Not because I hear the Chinese language, but because I've been fed up by the things that I have seen in this country. And so I stand here, not in partisanship, not as a candidate, but as a Nigerian who is interested in seeing that democracy survive in our country. For 10 years, we were in the commission. We established systems, developed tools, process and procedures to ensure that we deal with the historical challenges of election service delivery in our country. As at the time we left office, we had used this system to conduct 105 elections, including governorship elections, using the technology that we have developed on account of the fact that any nation that fails to embrace technology will be overtaken by the chaos of decay and decline. There could be no other time than now to speak about free, fair, and credible election, given that the lights of democracy are going out in Nigeria, democracy that we all fought for. I was detained in Enugu State. I was declared wanted by the government or the military, Oyegu and 24 others, all because of this democracy. And so democracy must work. What gives spice and piquancy to the practice of democracy is the presence of opposition. Any democracy without opposition has in it a virus that may lead to its death. And that is why it's important for all to understand why there must be opposition in our party's democracy. As we all know, every election is a test. I dare say that the 2027 election will be more than a test on account of what we are seeing. It will be a verdict that whether we have learned the lessons of the past and are ready to have free, fair, and credible election is up to us. We have the Electoral Act 2026. We have the Beavers. We have the IRF. We have the lessons of 2023. We have technology that are giving us tools. We have laws that are giving us rules. But as you all know, technology, rules are not themselves implemented. They require men and women of integrity to implement them. Because good laws, process and procedure that are not manned by men of integrity will take a country to nowhere. But inadequate laws manned by men and women of integrity will take a country somewhere. And that underscores the importance of election. Achieving credible, free, fair, and credible election is a multi-stakeholder responsibility. And as you all know, it's the responsibility of key stakeholders, and I identify 5 of them, out of which 3 are very key. You have the INEC, you have the judiciary, you have the security agencies, you have political parties, candidates, CSO, citizens. But indeed, the three key agencies that very foremost are INEC, the judiciary, as well as security agencies. The trinity of these three agencies are enough to take the poetry of our election from that of manipulation and rigging, particularly the ENB, which is saddled with the responsibility to midwife democratic elections. May I say this here? The conduct of election is all involving activity of nations embark on in peacetime, because the outcome of election has implications for national security. It has implications for stability and sustainability of democracy. And building democracy is a complex process, but elections are just only the first stage. And therefore, it is periodic election that provide the people the opportunity to exercise their residual sovereignty, having given in the last election part of their sovereignty to a group of people to act on their behalf. Therefore, in an election as coming, it now gives them the opportunity to be able to reject, to elect, to extend, or to elect those who they think should come and lead them. That is the whole essence of having election. And so the outcome of election, if not well managed, as we have seen in several parts of the world, particularly in African countries, in Kenya, where the outcome of election led to almost the country in turmoil. People were killed, houses were destroyed, and so many people found themselves in IDP camps, homeless, and many on forced migration on account of election. The governor just referenced the weightier experience in the First Republic, Second Republic. We are all living witness to what happened. A renowned publisher, Fagbengbe, was killed in Ondo State on account of election. So the question is, what are the key elements that constitute free, fair, and credible election? Two, globally, there are two broad indicators: process indicators, and number two, outcome indicators. Under process indicators, I will focus on only two elements because my paper contains everything because of time. The most important is the sanctity of law. The law that will govern the conduct of election. The landscape of election must be certain, must be unequivocal, must be clear to all and sundry, while outcome indicators will show whether the outcome of the election itself is actually credible or not. Now, with respect to the sanctity of law, which is the basis of some of the interventions I've made in recent times, in the course of preparing for this paper, I have found other provisions that are very troubling. And I wonder whether members of the National Assembly, they actually saw some of these provisions that I have found again just yesterday. And I need to go to those areas so that the essence of this engagement is to ensure that all the political parties that are here, you should be able to immediately go to the National Assembly to present a cornucopia of all these provisions for immediate amendment, because an amendment process could be one day, maximum within a week. Those of them who are in the House, we could see a number of them here. Now, I have, in my engagement, identified a number of provisions which are key to election. Whether we are ready for the 2027 election, these provisions have to be dealt with. Already, those that have identified that we have watched the television, on television, they are there already. That is number section 63, section 60, subsection 3, that has to do with the transmission. Of course, by that proviso and as a senior advocate and all lawyers that are here would have testified, that once you put a proviso to override the main provision, of course, that is what is going to be relied on. But what is more troubling is the fact that at the level of the balloting, where the will of the people should be expressed, that already been sabotaged by virtue of section 62, subsection 3, which says that the ballot paper that will be used for the election that does not bear the official, mark. By official mark, you mean the various security features that are contained. So what you need to do, as was done in Ghana, when we went on intervention in Ghana, was that the political parties, all of them, decided to ask the EMB, where are you producing the ballot paper and the result sheet? If it's outside the country, that has to be audited. That has to be known where they are producing the ballot paper and the result sheet. That is very, very key for you to take home. Furthermore, if there was a projection, I would have shown something here. Unfortunately, we don't have that. I will just explain to you. As someone who spent 10 years and I traversed almost the entire country in conducting election, Governor Leah Imoke's election, second term election, I presided over that election. That was the first time the Jega leadership piloted e-transmission. We sat in my office, the 18 local government of Cross River State, all the results were transmitted live in 2012. At that time, some of these provisions you are seeing that I've identified, you see how some of them, but because we came in with integrity, with the decision that we must make democracy work in Nigeria, we circumvented all the rigging provisions that we identified as at that time. And that was why we were able to achieve that. And so, if you look at what they have said in section 137, this is important. Section 137 says that all the presiding officers, collation officers, returning officers that are going to conduct this election, that at the end of the election, if you are going to a tribunal, it shall not be necessary to invite them to the tribunal to explain how election was conducted. It is actually been my view that the burden of proof of how election is conducted should be on the EMB. That it is unfair to say that a man who will return as the winner of election and petitioner will not be the one at the tribunal to explain how election is conducted. Whereas, who recruits ad hoc staff is INEC. Who print ballot paper is INEC. Who conducts election is INEC. At the end of election, who is in custody of election material? INEC. Who is in a better position to explain how election was conducted? And that is why I will argue for inquisitorial method as is done in other parts of the world. It is to be INEC that should come and explain. And that is why this is topic I'm going to take on to engage my constituency, the judges that look, section 131 of the Evidence Act, section 136 of the Evidence Act, section 140 of the Evidence Act are very clear to the fact that if there is a dispute as to how a claim is made, the onus is on the person who is making the existence of a claim. For instance, if at point A, a party says the election was not conducted, that's a negative assertion. If at point B and the other person say election was conducted, it is the person who says that election was conducted, i.e. INEC, or the person who returned, should be the one to explain how that is done, and not the person who said it did not occur. I am going to give a better clarity to this in my engagement in the next few weeks. That is a message to the judiciary. Now, if votes do not count, election becomes a mere ritual without actually voting. My core message to you, as I round up, is that democracy cannot take place in the soil of absolutism. As political parties, you have a duty. You must, as quickly as possible, ensure that you go ahead and approach National Assembly. First recommendation. Number two, the Nigerian people are watching. They want to see how you are also going to present yourself as a credible alternative in terms of how you also conduct your party primaries, how your candidate will emerge. Nigerians are also waiting to see how you are going to do that. That's a clear message so that they can make a clear distinction as to what is going on. You must always engage the judiciary on all of the issues that are being put together. Fidelity to the law of law, when we have an electoral act that gives options of obedience, then democracy will have problem. The law will die because nobody will obey that. So when you say that an option that if there's a network failure, of course there will be network failure in many places by 2027. So what you need to do is to protect the polling unit, ensure that the results that are going to be produced at the polling unit, train your polling unit agent, have all of them there. You to insist on having the right process of winning, so that you also can have the right process to say you have lost election. Then, of course, today the Electoral Act has now given room for the people who now can produce what they call face document. It is political parties that usually submit candidates with face document. It is not usually not INEC. On the issue of violence, we have to be careful on that. But fundamentally, the role of security agents, which I want to narrow down on very quickly here, we have been getting reports across the country, and it's not the first time. Under the 2026 Electoral Act, political rally is a matter of rights as enshrined in the Constitution, in the Electoral Act. Section 99 says that all apparatus of states, at the state level, at the national level, in terms of civic center, television station, all of them belong to the people of this country. And that with respect to television, there must be equal airtime parity that must be given to all. And no political party or candidate should be denied access to any of this facility. It is guaranteed under the law. And interestingly, the Act now says that the only duty of police is to provide adequate security and not to grant permission. Police not to grant permission. You can notify police of your event, as we are done here now, without necessarily have to talk about it. But then with respect to venue, the law also says that to address all issue of conflict of venue, what is required is to use the principle of first come, first serve. That is what has been asked to be done. So, as I close here, I want to say that in a democracy, no group of people are good enough to lead without the express view, support, and mandate of Nigerian people. This is what best expresses the idea of democracy. Free, fair, and credible election is what gives spice and piquancy to the game of democracy. Democracy, free, fair, and credible election must not be only a slogan. It must be something that we all must be able to recognize as an obligation that all must do. No nation can rise above the value orientation of its nation. If we don't resolve the politics, we cannot resolve our economy. The politics is so key because development decisions are embedded in politics and political process. And that is why the choice of people that we make in public office will determine whether we are going to make growth. So I want to say by ending that may we give an election where in this 2027, all of us will be able to say as a people, as a country, that indeed we are able to give one thing for our people, which is nothing but the heritage of food, so that we can build a society where there will be opportunity for all and responsibility for all. Because the broad outline of the 21st century is very clear. It offers opportunity for people who can work together, live together, and develop new ties that bind them together by having a free, fair, and credible election. Thank you all.